Tonight, if you're engaged or married, you're going to look down at your left hand without even thinking about it. That small piece of metal on your fourth finger feels permanent. Obvious, almost biological, like it was always meant to be there. But for most of human history, nobody agreed on which finger a ring belonged on. And the reason we settled on this one isn't romantic at all. It's based on a piece of human anatomy that doctors have known for over 400 years is completely provably false. So why do we still do it? To find the answer, you have to go back roughly 2,000 years. To ancient Rome, Romans didn't invent the wedding ring. Egyptians were exchanging circular reed and hemp bands centuries earlier, using the circle to represent eternity, since a circle has no beginning and no end. But Romans added something new. They created the annulus pronibus, a betrothal ring, often made of iron, given by a groom to signal ownership and a legal contract rather than affection. This wasn't about love. It was about property, agreements, and public proof that a woman was spoken for. And this is where things get strange. Romans didn't place this ring randomly. They chose one specific finger, on one specific hand, for a very specific reason, involving something they believed was hiding inside the human body. Something anatomists, centuries later, would prove never existed at all. The belief was this. Romans thought a delicate vein ran directly from the fourth finger of the left hand, straight to the heart. They called it the vena amoris, the vein of love. Put a ring there, and you weren't just decorating a finger. You were symbolically locking a physical connection to someone else's heart. This idea wasn't just folk superstition passed around by regular citizens. It shows up in real historical writing. The Roman author, Aulus Gellius, writing in the 2nd century AD in his work Attic Nights, documented Egyptian and Roman beliefs about this exact vein, describing why the ring finger, and specifically that finger, was treated as anatomically special. Centuries later, classicist Anthony Corbeil, in his book Nature Embodied, Gesture in Ancient Rome, examined how Romans used the body itself as a kind of symbolic language, where placement on the hand wasn't accidental. It was believed to carry real, physical meaning. Here's the twist though. By the time European anatomists began dissecting human bodies in detail during the Renaissance, this vein simply wasn't there. There is no unique vein connecting the fourth finger to the heart. Every finger's blood vessels lead back to the heart eventually, just like every other vein in the body. The vena amoris was never anatomically real. So, why didn't the tradition die the moment science disproved it? Because by then, it wasn't really about anatomy anymore. It was about ritual. Once a symbol becomes emotionally load-bearing enough, people don't need it to be biologically true. They just need it to feel true. And weddings, more than almost any other human ritual, run on feeling. This is a pattern historians see over and over. Once a symbolic act becomes tied to a major life transition, birth, marriage, death, the original justification can be completely wrong. And the behavior survives anyway, simply because stopping it would feel like betraying tradition itself. So, how did a debunked Roman anatomical myth travel all the way to your hand today? First, the tradition moved from Rome into early Christian Europe, where the church adopted rings as part of formal marriage ceremonies, rather than just legal contracts. Then, in 1549, the Book of Common Prayer, the foundational liturgical text of the Church of England, explicitly instructed that the ring be placed on the fourth finger of the left hand during the wedding ceremony cementing. In official religious text, a placement that started as a myth about a vein that doesn't exist. And then something even stranger happened, and nobody really talks about this part. In several Catholic and European traditions, the ring was originally placed on the right hand, not the left, because the left hand was historically associated with bad luck, dishonesty, or even, in the literal Latin, sinister. It wasn't until later, cultural shifts heavily reinforced, by English and later, American custom, that the left hand became the dominant standard almost everywhere in the Western world. But here's what nobody tells you. This still isn't universal today. In countries like Germany, Russia, Norway, and India, wedding rings are traditionally worn on the right hand, not the left. The obvious fourth finger left hand rule you assume is a global human default is really just one regional tradition that won a popularity contest over centuries, not the biological or universal truth at all. And this brings us to today, where the tradition didn't just survive, it became a multi-billion-dollar industry. In 1938, the diamond company De Beers, working with the advertising agency N.W. Ayer, launched what would become one of the most successful marketing campaigns in history, A Diamond is Forever. Before this campaign, diamond engagement rings were relatively uncommon. Journalist Edward J. Epstein, who investigated the diamond industry in depth, documented how, within just a few decades, this single marketing push helped push diamond engagement rings from a small minority of American engagements to the overwhelming cultural default. The vast majority of engagements by the late 20th century involved a diamond, specifically worn on that same fourth finger. Romans mythologized 2,000 years earlier. Historian Vicky Howard, in her book Brides, declares American Weddings and the Business of Tradition, traced how this ring placement, originally rooted in a fictional vein, became one of the most commercially defended traditions. In modern life, an entire industry built on top of an anatomical myth nobody actually believes anymore. So think about that the next time you see a ring. There is no vein of love. There never was. The vessel Romans believed connected your fourth finger directly to your heart is, medically, a complete fiction one debunked hundreds of years ago. And still, somehow, completely irrelevant to whether the tradition continues. So what if the ring was never actually about the finger at all? What if what we've really been doing for 2,000 years is choosing to believe in something anyway, not because it's biologically true, but because believing it makes the moment feel bigger than it is? Every time someone slides a ring onto that finger, they're not completing a scientific circuit to the heart. They're participating in a myth so old, so deeply repeated, that the myth itself became the meaning. We didn't keep the Vena Amoris because it was real. We kept it because we wanted it to be. And maybe that's the whole story of every ritual we call sacred.